Jason has come to Tasmania's best-preserved penal station at Port Arthur to meet convict historian Hamish Stewart, who's researched Joseph Lyon's case.
Hamish, explain a little bit about this.
Well, this is what's left of a convict penitentiary. So it is very typical of the kind of building that Joseph would have been in. And here you've got single cells. Yeah, there was a real phobia about convicts having contact with other convicts. So here's the stand to put the wash basin in here.
Right.
And the hole for the ventilation shaft up here, obviously that there would have been a floor. You've still got a hammock hook on either side there. But basically, that is it.
But the cruelest aspect of transportation was the separation of the convict from their loved ones. The cost of a one-way passage between England and Australia was beyond the means of almost all prisoners.
Some prisoners took coins of the realm and rubbed off the surface of them. And the one that they really liked to use was the George III cartwheel tuppence, because it's a ridiculous coin. So hold your hand out. How about that for a coin?
God.
They would grind the face of the king off. There goes George III, rob him off. And then they would engrave them with sentimental verses.
Right.
So here we have one from J. Fletcher. You can see his wife and child. So we know that transportation hurt like hell. And in fact, there was a popular saying in the 19th century that if you didn't see your husband or wife for 7 years, you were entitled to remarry.
Right.
Because there's no divorce, except for the very, very rich. Right. So for most transported people, they would know that this was it.
That was it, yeah. The interesting thing is that Joseph, being convicted in 1841, came to Australia in 1842. He left behind his wife, Rosetta. It was a 10-year sentence. My great-great-grandfather, Simeon Lyons, was born in Tasmania. Now, Rosetta obviously was in London.
Yeah, so the big question is, who is the mother?
Well, I guess that's one, yeah.
It's an interesting question. It took us quite some time. A small number of convicts were successful in getting their wives to follow them out.
Really?
They
That's
petitioned
amazing.
and got them out.
Wow.
We do have a record from one of the Launceston newspapers.
Oh, sorry.
We're up here, November the 6th arrived the ship Jane, 341 tonnes. And
Mrs. Buckland, Mrs. Brotherson, Mrs. Newman, Mrs. River, Mr. and Mrs. Parson, Mrs. Lyons and child. Wow.
And we've been through every possibility.
And that is?
It is Rosetta.
Right.
Now what's really interesting about this is that she doesn't seem to have come through official channels. He seems to have paid to get her out. Now that's very, very unusual.
By 1845, when Rosetta arrived in Tasmania, Joseph was 3 years into his sentence. Under new regulations, convicts were allowed to serve out their term working in the community after an initial period of custody. Joseph's convict record shows that at first he worked on a road gang during the day and was locked up in his cell at night. But after 2 years, he was assigned on probation to work for a Jewish family in the north of the island.
There was a small but very, very strong Jewish congregation in Hobart and Launceston, and they appear to have literally plucked Joseph Lyons out of the probation system and put him under their wing. It also helps to explain that communication with the family left behind in London and how Rosetta manages to get on a ship, and indeed how the money is put together to actually pay the passage to get her out. And the nice little bit, or the bit that I like about this, is 9 months after Rosetta arrives, she gives birth to a child.
Right.
So, but unfortunately it's not Simeon, it's Isaac.
Right.
but Simeon comes down the track.
Right.
So unlike the vast majority of transported convicts, in fact Joseph Lyons managed to buck the trend.
So this story is unique.
It's not unique, but it is remarkable.
Right.
I was always vaguely aware that I had a Jewish connection, but in my life, it really has never mattered to me.
But the revelation from Hamish about Joseph Lyons, the fact that he reunited with Rosetta in Australia, I thought was fascinating.
What I take from the Jewish element is the sort of camaraderie of the community. And to that extent, I guess Rosetta's passage to Australia is a great example of when a group of people or a family come together. It hasn't always been a tighter unit in my life, but it's interesting to see how history has sort of made me think twice about my origins.
In 1849, Joseph was officially pardoned, and a few years later, he and his family went to the Australian mainland. But in 1856, shipping records show that the entire family returned home to Whitechapel in London, where Joseph and Rosetta passed their remaining years together. But their son, Simeon, returned to Australia in his 20s and settled in Melbourne, where in 1886 he had an Australian daughter, Jason's great-grandmother, Eileen.